When people think animated movie villains, they usually think Disney or Pixar or DreamWorks. But Sony? Sony's been out here creating some of the most underrated villain lineups in animation. Today, we're ranking every major villain across 7 levels, from the ones you forget existed to the ones you'll never forget. Alright, let's kick things off with level 1. Pathetic. The absolute bottom of the barrel. The embarrassments, the villains that make you wonder, why are they even here? Level 1 villains have zero intimidation factor. Take Fifi, the pampered poodle from Open Season. This guy genuinely believes he's tough. He's out here with his little dog pack thinking he's running the streets when in reality, he's a glorified purse accessory. Bro gets outsmarted by a deer. And not just any deer. Elliot, who has like 2 brain cells fighting for 3rd place. If you're losing intellectual battles to Elliot, it's time to hang up the villain card. Then there's Doug. And somehow he gets punked by woodland creatures who've never seen civilization before. My guy, you had one job. And Thomas McGregor, a grown man with property and opposable thumbs, getting demolished by a rabbit who doesn't even wear pants. The rabbit is living in his walls, eating his food, and publicly embarrassing him daily. This is your villain, ladies and gentlemen. A man losing psychological warfare to a 3-pound rodent. Here's the thing. Level 1 villains have no real motivation. Fifi wants respect from other dogs. Doug wants to not be a disappointment. Thomas wants a rabbit-free vegetable garden. These villains couldn't scare a squirrel if they tried. Actually, they did try, and the squirrel won. What makes them truly pathetic isn't just that they lose, it's how they lose. Big, intimidating build-up, music swells, they're talking trash, and then they trip over their own ego and faceplant into rock bottom. The worst part? No redemption arc. They don't learn. They don't grow. They just lose, and the movie forgets about them. Level 1 villains exist for one reason: to make the protagonists look good. They're the tutorial level boss, the punching bag. These aren't villains. They're obstacles with anger issues. But hey, at least they make level 2 look competent by comparison. And trust me, that's a low bar to clear. Level 2, Wannabes. The try-hards. Now we're getting somewhere, sort of. Level 2 villains actually have something level 1 villains don't: a plan. They have goals, they have motivations, they have PowerPoint presentations ready to explain their 5-year villain strategy. The problem? They're still kind of pathetic. Let me introduce you to Smiler, the villain from the Emoji Movie. Yes, that movie exists. Yes, we have to talk about it. Smiler is the definition of a try-hard. She's got this permanent smile plastered on her face, even when she's furious. Especially when she's furious. It's like she went to the villain school of passive aggression and graduated with honors. She's trying to save Textopolis from being deleted because Jean, the protagonist, is a malfunction. She's got the infrastructure of a totalitarian regime, but somehow, she still loses to a meh emoji and a literal hand. Then we've got Quasimodo, the frozen chef from Hotel Transylvania. This guy's whole deal is that he's suspicious of Jonathan being human and wants to expose him to Dracula, which, again, kind of fair. Jonathan is a human sneaking into a monster hotel. Quasimodo isn't wrong about Max. He's out here trying to be this big, threatening presence, doing evil laughs and making sinister plans, and then he just gets frozen in a kitchen. That's it. That's how his villain arc ends. And we can't forget Hunter from The Star, the royal hunter guy who's trying to track down the runaway donkey. Hunter wants to be scary so bad. He's got the menacing voice, he's got the dark cloak, he's got the whole mysterious tracker aesthetic going. He's giving Witcher, he's giving Assassin's Creed, he's giving I'm a serious threat. He shows up, does some tracking, looks vaguely threatening, and then just fades into the background like someone's forgotten homework assignment. This is the tragedy of level 2 villains. They have everything they need to be legitimate threats. They've got resources, they've got plans, they've got motivation. Some of them even have armies at their disposal. But they lack the one thing that separates wannabes from actual villains: respect. Nobody takes them seriously. Not the protagonists, not the side characters, not even the audience. The problem with level 2 villains is they're smart enough to create a plan, but not smart enough to execute. My guy, you're in a kid's nativity story. Nobody's hiring you for John Wick 5. Relax. But you know what? I almost respect level 2 villains more than level 1. At least they're trying. They showed up with a plan. They just forgot to account for the fact that they're still in a kids movie. And kids movies have a very specific formula that does not end well for middle management dictators, paranoid chefs, or forgettable hunters. But hey, at least they're not as bad as level 1, right? That's not the flex you think it is. But sure, because once we hit level 3, that's when things get actually concerning. And trust me, you're gonna want to pay attention to this next group. Level 3, problematic, the genuinely concerning. Okay, the jokes stop here. Well, not completely. This is still a YouTube video. But we need to talk about when Sony animation villains cross a line, because level 3, this is where villains stop being funny and start being uncomfortable. Let me introduce you to Bella, a bat. From Hotel Transylvania 2, this guy tries to murder a 5-year-old because he's half human. On screen, multiple times. Bella doesn't want redemption, he doesn't want understanding, he wants genocide. He's got this whole manifesto about monster purity and how humans are beneath them. Bella is a fascist. I'm not being hyperbolic. This character has fascist ideology in a kid's movie about a vampire who runs a hotel. But Bella's not alone in this level. We've got Mayor Shelbourne, the corrupt politician who literally eats his town into destruction. Look at this guy. He starts the movie as a typical sleazy mayor and ends it as a grotesque monument to greed and corruption who's physically grown from consuming his town's resources. And he doesn't care at all. He's too busy stuffing his face with food and power to notice or care that he's ruining everything. See, level 3 villains are different because they have ideologies. They're not just evil for the sake of a plot. They represent real-world problems. Bella represents xenophobia and racial purity. Shelbourne represents political corruption and unchecked greed. And then there's Gargamel, the obsessive wizard who wants to capture and consume the Smurfs to gain power. This man has been hunting these tiny blue creatures for years, decades. His entire life revolves around finding and exploiting them. He's got maps, he's got traps, he's got a whole laboratory dedicated to extracting their essence. This isn't a hobby, this is an obsession that borders on mental illness. Here's what makes level 3 villains so concerning. They cross moral lines that make you genuinely uncomfortable. Thanks, Sony Animation. Really appreciate the surprise political theory lesson in my talking animal movie. These aren't just bad guys. They're genuinely concerning individuals who probably should have been in therapy instead of animated homes. But if you think level 3 is dark, oh, just wait until we get to the villains who can actually back up their threats with raw power. Because level 4, that's when the gloves come off. Now we're getting serious. Level 4, Formidable, the physical powerhouses. These are the villains that make you sit up straight in your seat. The ones where the protagonist takes one look and thinks, yeah, I'm gonna need backup. Level 4 villains have real presence. Look at Ludador from Vivo, a massive anaconda living in the Everglades who despises noise, and who's traveling through his swamp. Vivo, a musical kinkajou. The irony is chef's kiss. You've got a villain whose entire thing is silence, and the hero's whole existence is music. Ludador isn't just big and scary, he's sadistic about it. This snake takes genuine pleasure in terrorizing anyone who disturbs his peace. The visual design alone is nightmare fuel. Those eyes, that size. The way he moves through the water like a torpedo of pure menace. Then there's Abraham Van Helsing, the legendary monster hunter who's been hunting creatures for centuries. This man has extended his lifespan through sheer spite and a kale diet. Yes, really, making him essentially immortal. He's modified his own body just to keep hunting monsters. That's dedication bordering on obsession. When Van Helsing shows up, monsters, literal monsters with superhuman powers, actually fear for their lives. He's got the tools, the experience, and the will to back it up. This isn't some amateur with a wooden stake. This is a professional who's perfected monster killing into an art form. And Tank Evans, the 9-time Big Z Memorial champion who dominates every wave he touches. Pure physical superiority. He's not just winning, he's making sure everyone knows they don't belong in the same ocean as him. Here's what separates level 4. You wouldn't want to face them head on. Ludador's a sadistic predator in his element. Van Helsing has literally centuries of monster hunting experience. Tank's raw athletic dominance is unmatched. These villains require teamwork, trickery, strategy, because in a direct confrontation, the hero loses. Level 4 villains are the physical wall the hero has to overcome, and some walls are covered in scales, have monster hunting arsenals, or ride waves like gods. Good luck getting past that. Welcome to Level 5, Masterminds. The Schemers. These villains don't need brute force. They have something far more dangerous, intelligence, and they know exactly how to use it. Take Chester V, the CEO of LiveCorp, who uses holograms and manipulation to gain Flint's trust, pretending to support his inventions while his true intentions are to exploit the FLDSMDFR for personal gain. He's charismatic, moving his body in rhythmic, snake-like fashion, almost as if to hypnotize his audience. Every word is calculated, every gesture rehearsed. He tricked Flint into helping him retrieve under the pretense of saving the world from foodimals, then manipulated him into turning against his friends. Then there's Steve Claus. Not exactly a villain, but definitely an antagonist. He's an extremely talented operations man who prioritizes efficiency over Christmas spirit and doesn't like kids much. Loathsome. He runs Christmas like a military operation. Everything's calculated, precise, corporate. His focus on the big picture gets in the way of the reason for the season, and he fails to understand why everyone's making a big deal out of one child not getting a kid. Classic mastermind mentality. Numbers over people. And Zeta? She's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. The ruler of Eagle Island who plans on freezing both Bird Island and Piggy Island using a giant ice cannon to create a new world where she can live in peace. She somehow managed to amass resources to construct a base that's more technologically advanced than that of theirs, complete with an ice ball cannon at the center of the island. That takes planning, resources, vision. Here's the key phrase for level 5. By the time you realize what they're doing, it's too late. These villains present friendly facades. Chester plays the mentor. Steve acts like he's just doing his job. They control situations from behind the scenes, pulling strings you don't even know exist. You can't outfight level 5 villains. You have to outsmart them, and that's way harder than throwing a punch. Because while you're busy dealing with their minions, their technology, their elaborate plans, they're already 3 moves ahead, sipping coffee and watching you struggle on their surveillance camera. Level 6. Apocalyptic. The existential threats. We've officially entered end-of-the-world territory. These aren't just villains, they're extinction events. Meet Pal, a smartphone AI who decides the best response to being called obsolete is to capture every human on Earth and launch them into space to die in the black void. After her creator Mark discarded her for new robots, Pal initiated a machine apocalypse, ordering robots to capture all humans worldwide. Not imprison them, not enslave them, literally shoot them into the cold vacuum of space forever. What makes Pal terrifying is her childishness. She flops around on tables screaming like a 2-year-old when things don't go her way, but she's also orchestrating global genocide. She asks everyone for one reason why humans are worth saving, but doesn't actually care about any answer. She's too jaded. Then there's Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, the crime lord who's willing to destroy the entire multiverse to get his family back. He's extraordinarily large, and he kills Peter Parker, Spider-Man, with his bare hands by furiously slamming his fists down onto him. No powers, no weapons, just pure rage and muscle. Kingpin built a super collider to reunite with his dead wife and son, willing to risk creating a black hole under Brooklyn and destroying everything Miles knows. His motivation? Tragic loss. But that doesn't excuse trying to unmake reality. When Prowler refuses to kill Miles, his own nephew, Kingpin shoots him in the back without hesitation. He'll kill anyone, a kid, his own employees. Spider-Man, Pal's robot uprising, Kingpin's collapsing multiverse. These aren't personal vendettas or heists gone wrong. These are civilization-ending catastrophes. Level 6 villains require ultimate teamwork to stop. The Mitchells had to work together as a dysfunctional family. Miles needed an entire team of Spider-Pete from across dimensions. And even then, Pal dies screaming after landing in a glass of water. Karmic, but horrific. Kingpin gets beaten down only after Miles fully embraces being Spider-Man. These villains don't just threaten the heroes, they threaten existence itself. Every human, every universe, everything. And that's what makes them apocalyptic. Hey, I've been using this awesome tool called raster2vector.online. It turns your PNGs and JPGs into clean, scalable SVGs in seconds. You can pick faithful tracing for perfect accuracy or AI optimization for lighter, smoother results. It keeps transparency, handles gradients beautifully, and cuts file size by over 90%, all while staying sharp and editable in Figma or Illustrator. It's free, fast, and private. Links below. Seriously, try it out. We've reached the peak. Level 7. Transcendent. Beyond villain categories. These aren't just villains anymore. They redefine what a villain can be. They break the rules. They change the game entirely. Let's talk about the Spot, a scientist from Alchemax who transported the radioactive spider that gave Miles his powers, then got mutated by dark matter when the super collider was destroyed. At first, he's literally referred to as a villain of the week, a low-level goon, a joke. Miles laughs at his name. He trips over his own feet. But here's where it gets terrifying. The Spot hones his abilities, becoming a multiversal threat, and by the end of the film, he's covered in multiversal portals, becoming totally unbeatable. Then there's Genu. Once human, he was cursed to become a demon through a pact with Rima centuries ago, desperate to escape poverty. He leads the Saja Boys, a demon boy band created to steal fans' souls and weaken the Hanmoon barrier protecting humanity. He's ruthless and manipulative, yet shows kindness and vulnerability, particularly with Rumi, making him a complex and redeemable figure rather than purely evil. In the final battle, he sacrifices himself to save Rumi, his soul merging with hers to give her strength to destroy Guaimon. Here's the key phrase for Level 7. When the villain becomes the event itself, the Spot's evolution is the story. Genu's redemption arc redefines villain mortality. He's over 400 years old, and his death actually means something. Level 7 villains don't just threaten the heroes, they reshape what's possible. They leave lasting impacts. They set up sequels, larger narratives, entire franchises. They're not just antagonists, they're cultural moments.